and I'm going to skip intros today for the sake of like moving on, um, is something that, happens a lot on Facebook. It's part of the execution question that they have. They have sense and then they have execution. And under the execution question, they're going to ask you questions like, um, it's a mix of things, right? They can ask you about goals. They can ask you about, success metrics. They can ask you about diagnosing, how do you diagnose a problem and how do you fix it? And they will ask you then follow-up questions based on trade-offs, how do you make trade-offs and so on. Now, this is a typical one, and I want to go through that because it happens, and I think there are not too many examples on how to answer this. And I have a structure that I've created based on conversations with other people that gave me their opinion how they would answer and that I respect in terms of their experience, as well as my own analysis. Okay, so I want to put the framework here. And if you have feedback about the framework, we can talk about it. But then I would like to go and do the question, and maybe we apply the same framework to a different question. Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks.
Yep. All right. So first of all, I'm going to talk. Let's say that somebody asked me this question. Hey, Malena, thank you for being on Facebook. Whatever. What are your goals? What are your goals for Facebook groups? And so the first thing that I would say is like, all right. So first of all, Facebook groups. Let me try to understand make sure that I understand what the product is, right? And so Facebook groups is this feature that enables people that share something together, to get together, find each other and discuss what they like. And aligns pretty well with the mission of Facebook, which is, to get people together and connect them and empower them to be communities. How, would you agree with it? And, they'll probably say yes, right? So once you start with that and I start about the product, then I say, okay, so if I were, this is a situation, and let me rephrase, if I am the PM of these Facebook groups and I come in as a PM, and then what are the goals I'm going to set, right? And they'll probably just say yes. All right. And now, so here, give me a moment to think about it, but so maybe you take a minute. I don't know if you need that, right? And this is what I would say. I would say that I usually think in terms of short-term goals and long-term goals, okay? And, in order to set the goals, first of all, what I like to do is to define, what's the product goal first? What's the product mission? And then what I like to do is to define sort of like a North Star for that product. That's going to basically be like my guiding thing, right? That's the destination where I want to go. Everything should align with that. And then I think in terms of like short-term goals and long-term goals. And for short-term goals, what I'm thinking is, look, we already have the product. Those short-term goals should be based on the features that we have right now, right? And the first thing that I would do is actually look at the metrics that we have, define those metrics that are really important for that product. So I will go and look at the metrics, and those metrics, I'm going to pick the most important ones that are related to the life cycle of the product. And then after I do that, look at, what's the product stage? Because the product could be, and this product is not new, right? But in general, that's what I would do. Look at the product stage, what are the business goals of the company, and then, consider my North Star. I will take all this into account, and then what I'm going to do is prioritize my metrics, prioritize which metric. And then I would set a goal for that metric, like for my team. Hey, we need to improve this metric by so much percentage or so on. So that's what I think in terms of short term. And in terms of long-term goals, then how do I do that? Well, when I think in terms of long-term goals, I think about, okay, the mission of the product. The mission is to, for this particular product, is to enable, people to build communities, together. And I would think about what are the challenges, future challenges or maybe existing challenges that we haven't overcome. And that's what I'm going to think first. What are challenges that we haven't overcome yet? And then based on those challenges, then I'm going to set some OKRs. Basically, OKRs are objectives, which are the goals. And then how do I measure those objectives, right? So measurable results. And that's in general how I think. And, I may present the structure like this, or maybe it's too long. Or I might say, let me start with my short-term goals, and this is how I'm going to think about it. And then I move on to the long-term goals. Or maybe I say, hey, you want me to talk about short-term goals or long-term goals? So what do you guys think?
Hey, Malina, I think another way of also possibly exploring the goals could be to look at the user goals and then also look at the business goals for Facebook.
User goals and Facebook goals. Shouldn't they be the same?
Not necessarily. Usually they're a bit different. So so for example, the user goals could be given like Facebook's, like some of the things Facebook is focusing on, being able to connect with people who share your interests. It could be like being able to connect with people who share my interests, well-being. And then maybe for Facebook, since groups is very strategically important to them, they could say, if we're having more groups, there's going to be more engagement. If there's more engagement, then a lot of the metrics that matter to them, there's going to be more sharing. So that's sort of like how I'm thinking about it. Like you could also say user goals and then business goals, but the user goals will really be focused on the user.
Yeah, that's a little bit confusing because to me, those sound a lot like user needs, right? And I would use that as sort of like, for solving a design question. And, like let's say that you define, user goals. User goals has to be based on needs. They need to solve a problem, right? So you have a user goal. And then you will say, okay, but that's not, it seems to me a little bit too narrow, too micro. What are the thoughts of other people?
I like your approach, Melina. My one question, and maybe this is too high level thinking for like when you're down within a product within a product, so like groups within Facebook. But whenever I'm thinking about long-term goals, I'm trying to think like, what can we do to create defensible moats for ourselves? So differentiation and like hard to replicate things.
Differentiation and hard to replicate. So you're thinking about strategy. So that could be something, but you have to express it in such a way. Like for example, we can talk about this later, right? But what you're saying, I would express, for example, maybe in some companies do it this way, right? It's like, hey, we need to differentiate ourselves better, right? So we need to, what would be the objective if you want to differentiate yourself? You have to, well, the objective may be increase market share, right? So maybe you say we need to increase market share with new differentiated feature or goal, right? And then your result, you have to put your result, right? Say by increase market share by, I don't know, 20%. So that's the way I would define this, right? This is not cast in stone, but that's the way I would rephrase what you're saying in a goal, right?
Yeah.
Now going back to Oluseyi, did it make sense what I said?
Sorry, yes.
I think that, when you go into an execution question, you also need to think about the context in which they're asking you this question, right? You just went through a product sense. Maybe.
Oh, okay? I see. Okay.
Now we're going to an execution. And remember, execution is all about metrics, okay? Metrics and goals. If you're in an execution question and you are not touching metrics, there's a problem, right? And so this is, this is just one way, but there could be others. And I think you need to think a little bit more high level, right? And what they want you to do is to go through the metrics definition here, right? So other people may do it in a different way. You know, I've seen another way where for the long-term goals, they define, you know, the North Star. They define the North Star, and then out of the North Star, they define sort of like, you know, KPIs, so to speak. And these KPIs are going to be regarding, you know, growth, maybe engagement, frequency, and I think retention. And then out of this, then they come up with goals to increase this. You know, I think for me, this is too complex, but I'm just telling you that, you know, whatever way makes sense, right? If what I said to you makes sense, right? And I'm gonna come up with some goals for my team that are measurable, then that's all you need. Okay. Shall we move on, or somebody has another thing to say?
So for the long-term challenges, you're saying like what has been a challenge of this product that we have yet to overcome?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And so one of those challenges actually could be there's no technology here or aspect that is not hard to replicate.
It could be something like that, right? That's where you have to be. You have to look at your product holistically, right? I mean, for Facebook groups, it's a feature, right? It's kind of hard to say, right? But let's say that you think about. I'll tell you an example. Let's say Uber, okay? So Uber wants to be like the one solution for transportation, right? For everything, for transport, absolutely for everything. Let's say that Lime didn't exist, or the scooters, right?
Yeah.
Maybe because the mission is to be the one transportation for absolutely everything. You know, if I'm the PM, I come in and say, okay, that's our mission, right? What are challenges that our users have today? Well, it's the last mile, okay? So maybe how can we enable them to actually, instead of walking, they can have some kind of transport. Okay, so my goal is going to be to have a solution for the last mile for my user and increase, you know, usage or adoption by what, I don't know, 20%, whatever, right? So that would be a goal that I would say based on the challenge of my user that have not been met, you know, and that aligns with my mission. Make sense?
Got it.
Okay, so let's go into groups, okay, Facebook groups. And all right, so the product mission, as I said, is to, you know, enable users, or the best way or the best place to connect users that share something in common, right? You can say it in some different way, but I think that's what it is, more or less. What would be the North Star for this? That's going to be sort of like our guiding thing. That's what we want to move with whatever we do. So, you know, when I think about the North Star, and I explain this, I think it's very important that you have a definition of a North Star, whatever it is for you, and stack to it and be able to explain it. I think a lot of people go in there, they ask them for the North Star, and they don't have a clear definition of what it is. And then they get asked for it and defend why they chose that metric, and they cannot, right? So it's really important that you do. Now, for me, the North Star has to be a metric that, first of all, tells me about the value proposition to the user, you know, that's been successful. It has to tell me also that whatever strategy I'm using to, you know, get users to use it is working. And it has to tell me also, you know, I might want to make money out of this, right? Revenue. So 3 things. So that's what I'm trying to pick. Now, when I think about the North Star for this product, for Facebook groups, what's the value proposition? I think that the value proposition for the user is to connect with others, right? So I would say, you know, is it the number of users? No, I think it's the number of users their interactions have to be there because that tells me that they are connecting.
Mm-hmm.
And if I think about the strategy, well, I'm using groups, so that's already taken care of because I'm measuring for this group. And in terms of revenue, well, it's about advertising, right? And advertising revenue is made based on the frequent, how often people come back to Facebook and how much information they can get from them, right? And so the number of interactions, if that increases, that's sort of like an indicator that, yeah, we're getting more data from them and they're using the platform. So that should bring more revenue in terms of advertisements. So I think that if I were to pick a North Star, I would pick, the number of users. Okay, there are two. I'm trying to debate whether it's the number of users that interact in a group, or is it the number of interactions per user?
I think it's the second one. But I also feel like the other important part of this piece is the frequency at which they come back to the group.
Yeah, but your North Star cannot tell you everything, right? You have to pick the one that sticks to it. That's why you need to have a definition, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if your definition is, hey, my definition of North Star is the metric that's going to tell me retention, then yes, right? But you have to defend it, right? So,
well, see, the first one, users that interact in a group, if it's just one-time interaction.
Yeah, I'm trying to debate, between these two. The number of users that interact in a group, if that is increasing, right, that tells me that people are connecting, right? And this is, per day, could be per day or per week or whatever. And here is the number of interactions per user. But it's not telling me, maybe there's one user talking with another one and that's it. Oh no, actually it would tell me, right, per user, because it's very low.
Mm-hmm.
If it's very low, they're not connecting. Okay, which one do you guys think is the best one? Users that interact in group or interactions per user?
Second one.
Other votes?
First one.
Why?
Because in terms of Facebook, I think Facebook is always driven by the even the product as a whole is always driven by the number of users present or coming back every day, the DAU of Facebook. So
Yeah,
even for
that's not a good answer. Actually, that would be a bad answer. Because DAU doesn't tell you much. I think that the question that I have here is which of these metrics tell you that they're connecting? Which one is a better indicator that they're connecting?
So I think it should be the first one,
Mm-hmm.
because it depends on the context of the group itself. If it's a group that plans meetups or whatever, so then you don't need to interact often. But if you have multiple people saying, "Oh yes, I'm joining this," so then the users that interact, the number of users that interact in the group shows that the group is more successful because there's more participation, right?
Mm.
And if the context is something that requires a lot more discussion, then the number of interactions per user matters more.
Okay. All right. I accept that. Ellie, are you okay with?
No, I'm not, because at the end of the day, it's an ad-based product. So even if you if you had minimal users, but they were on there a long time engaging, you show them more ads.
Yeah.
Right.
I will agree with Ellie on this. It's an ad-based product. They want more user to come in and have interaction so that they can show more ads.
Mm-hmm.
And in the first case, an extreme users can, or like few extreme users can manipulate the whole data.
It's
So
actually the other way around.
No, this is the number of unique users that interact, right? I don't know. I think I still will go with the first one.
Okay.
The second one too is the first one seems like a more of a Facebook, the whole product metric. as do you keep groups or not. The second metric really tells me the health of the actual product, of that actual feature.
Yeah, I see. That also tells you if they're not interacting, they're not connecting. I see.
You might have a bunch of users with it might be a catchy group name or like something that compels a lot of people to join once. They go into that group, but then they never go again.
Right.
But
This will tell you that too, right?
yeah,
I would also say it also depends on the stage of the product. So if the stage of the product is pretty early, then our goal would be acquisition, and that's where the first one apply. But if the goal of the product is around engagement, then the second one will apply because getting more users would be anyways organic.
So then you're saying that that will tell you more of the intensity.
If I were to answer this, I would say that Facebook groups is a well used product. So the goal should be to increase engagement, which will satisfy the existing users. That would also lead to the viral effect, which is going to bring more users.
Yeah. So product stage is mature product.
Hey, Melina, because I have
Yeah.
something to touch upon that actually based on the last thing he said. So maybe given where the product is in the life cycle, maybe when we're thinking about metrics, we should ask ourselves, what actions do we want to see users take within the product? And then what metrics can we use to track those actions?
Yeah, that will come later.
Okay.
Yeah. So, okay, so I think we'll go with this one. Okay, I think that makes sense to me, what Kunal just said.
Kunal, can you repeat what you just said?
I'm sorry?
Kunal, can you repeat what you said?
Sure. So kind of the short and sweet is that if I were to answer this question, I'm going to make an assumption. It's a valid assumption, in my opinion, that Facebook groups right now is a mature product. There are already a lot of users. So considering a mature product, I want to increase the engagement. I want to improve the engagement because two things are going to happen. One is that the value of Facebook increases as more people spend time on Facebook. The number of interaction increases. That's where you can target them more. You get more data. And then the second is it's also going to drive new users. So it's indirectly going to tackle the first metric as well. But the primary one should be engagement, and that's why I would pick the number of interactions.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So let's choose one. I think that it doesn't matter as long as you can defend your metric really well. Okay, so let's say that that's the North Star. Let's now go into the metrics, okay? So now, the logic that I'm using here is that, look, I need to know what are the metrics that we are measuring, and then I'm going to prioritize the metrics, that I want to increase based on the product state, the business goals, and that's what I'm going to choose as my short-term goal to improve that metric. Okay, and then I'm going to move on to long-term goals. Does that make sense? Okay, so metrics. So here, when I'm looking at metrics, you cannot choose like every single metric, right? And the way I organize metrics for my team, I would organize them as growth metrics, conversion metrics, and then sort of like engagement. And the reason why I would do that is because it depends on the product stage. But some metrics are going to be more important than others. Conversion is, for example, if you have a new feature, and you want to find out if it's being effective or not. You want to increase that conversion, see that that's working. Whereas if that's already done, but you are working more on getting more people, frequently be conversing with each other, and having more of those features, then I'm going to focus on that, right? So, and I need to get my team to focus, not on all metrics, but on particular ones, right? So let's say we're talking about growth metrics. What would that be? So for this feature, we have, in terms of growth, I would say, and you can also think of users and then the activities that they have. But I would say some would be the number of members per group. And we can put a lot more, but I'm just putting some here just to start with. Number of members that interact after sign up versus the sign-ups. And I would say, this will be per day, per week, whatever. And then engagement would be, I would say, the percent of the group, percent of group that is active. And again, this is weekly, daily, weekly, monthly. And what are other metrics that you guys can think of or that I don't have here?
I think referrals are important for groups because I feel like every Facebook group that I've ever joined has been because somebody told me to join it.
I see. Okay. So we can put here, I would say maybe refer. I think that would be on growth here.
Growth, yeah.
Right? So you would put here referrals, number of, how would you measure that? Referrals per user?
Yeah, I can't remember how it's done. Oh, you know what it is? There's like requests. So the number of members like requesting to go into a group. I don't know if it varies from public to private groups, but
maybe invitations that somebody sends to somebody else. Okay, let's go to referrals. That's fine. All right, but I don't know if you guys have a different way of organizing your metrics, but did what I say make sense?
It does. I'm curious why you're not using like the ARM or the ARM framework.
I'm sorry?
So usually whenever I hear about like metrics or setting metrics, I always hear to use like the R or the ARM framework.
Yeah, I don't go by that.
Okay.
Especially for a lot of Facebook products, that doesn't work very well. But that's usually what I'm thinking of. So there are also other metrics that we can look at. In terms of number of members that interact, you can segment that also, right? By I would say number like power posters, for example. Or
comments.
Maybe repliers.
Yeah.
Right. We can go also and think about something more detail if you want to see. Yeah. We also can go here and say number on engagement is number of interactions per user, right? And this is actually our North Star. But this is in the group. Yeah, number of interactions per user. That's our North Star. But you can segment that even more and say, okay, number of posts, number of replies, and so on, right? But this would be details. I think that at the beginning, if you have a team and you say, hey, team, this is what we're going to look at every day, the percentage of maybe the people that are interacting, posting, or writing, right? Sort of like that's the high metric we should look at and what we should be moving, right? And this should be aligned with your North Star, right? So if you improve everything from the number of members in the group to the conversion here, number of members that interact after they sign up, to interactions, all of them should help move this North Star, right? Number of interactions per user in the group. So all should be aligned.
What about time between visits?
I'm sorry?
Time between visits?
Time between visits. So that, how would that help you?
Well, to me, it signifies, well, one, if they're visiting more, it means more engagement, right? But it also signifies to me like we share like the how much share of habit we've captured.
I see. Yeah, I think there's a metric that captures that. It seems like you know, daily active use over weekly active
Or
use. You
yeah,
know,
monthly active user, something like that.
yeah, daily active use over weekly active use sort of gives you that sense
Yeah, it's
of
called,
how active they are.
I think, stickiness. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we can go through this, you know, several metrics like that. But I think the key takeaway from here is that you cannot just throw metrics to the interviewer. Okay, you have to give them a reason, you know, a structure of how you view metrics, and how do you interpret metrics, and how do you prioritize the metrics. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So now let's go into long term. And so here the answer would be, hey, you know what? This is a product that is very mature. You know, I think that given the latest focus on groups being sort of like the primary feature of Facebook to make people engage, I would make my team focus on the engagement part, right? And so we should be moving everything that we do should be to increase this percentage of people that are interacting, sort of like the short-term goal. And, you know, what does that mean? How do we do it? Well, there are features there that can be improved, and maybe you can tell about some features that exist to improve. Now let's go into the long-term goal. Long-term goal, let's talk about challenges. So if we want people to go to groups, and what's the idea of groups? To get them to connect together and interact more, you know, build community. How do we do that even more? Is there something missing? What are the things that what is blocking somebody from going to groups and interacting?
So I would look at the challenges more from I would be more concerned with a mature product of people that were perhaps active at one time and we've seen drop off.
Mm. Mm-hmm. So how would you describe it? It's like
If any of like the
Sure.
engagement metrics have been going down.
Yeah, churning, or people leaving, people inactive, right? Or people
Inactive, or they've just become less frequent, like not visiting as frequently. So I guess the share of habit metric.
that's frequent. But let's put a word to it. Let me just think word for word. Users becoming dead users.
Well, they're not dead yet.
They could be resurrected. Okay, so let's call them like churn. Okay, let's just put a term there. Churn. Okay, what else? Churn increases.
Well, so for challenges, like, wouldn't that start with like what we what we actually more subjectively or personally think the product lacks?
Give me an example.
So, like with Facebook groups, the more people that a group gets, the more sort of conversations and directions that this group starts going in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And maybe the original, like, you know, core or original value that you got from going to that group or checking in with that group weekly or whatever sort of gets diluted as more things start coming in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whether they're, you know, things start coming in from different angles. So I feel like a filter or channels, like taking some slack.
You're thinking about solutions.
Yeah.
So, don't do that. So how to keep groups organized? Maybe no groups. What do you call it? What you just said? Not become chaotic, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What else? let me put some challenges there, okay?
Mhm.
I think that one of the challenges that people have is you are scared of how people are going to view you in the group, especially if it's a big group, right? So I think people are scared of like putting something there, writing down, and being vulnerable, right? So I think that maybe one challenge is like how to increase trust to share. Another one would be, how to connect people, um, how to enable people to connect in a more, how can I say? Today it's just conversations, feed, but I actually want to meet that person, right?
Mhm.
So, or
I
have a
think,
phone connection, right? So,
uh,
um,
could it also be around, the quality of conversations? It's not just about, the volumes.
yeah, how to improve quality of conversation.
And the other thing I can think about is, okay, so one thing is quality, and it should be a little outcome based, right? So there is a need because of which you are participating and interacting in a group, and you have some motives. Are you achieving your goals, right? It's kind of hard to quantify, but I'm not going to join a group unless I have some motives, and once I join it, those motives are met.
Yeah, I think there is. I think it boils down to your quality, Kunal. If I tell you the truth, because what what you're saying is that, hey, if you don't feel that you're getting something out of it, right, you're not going to return. Um, but how do you ensure that? How do you ensure that the person gets what they wanted, right? And I think that can be boiled down to quality. I think it's the same thing.
Yeah. And another one I can think about is, the whole discovery.
Mm,
So the discovery of groups itself, and then once you are within the groups, kind of looking at some of the content that exists already and how that could be useful for you. That's pretty hard, right? Because
mm.
I don't know if the search works on the comments and post as
Yeah.
an idea right now.
How to increase usefulness of group content, right?
Usefulness as well as discovery.
Usefulness is called.
I also feel like a lot of a group's success
Uh-huh.
is based on the actual organizer of the group.
Yeah,
So making sure that it's almost like passing along some of the responsibility or some of, the moderation and stuff. It's
yeah,
almost like we're passing it along to the organizer of the group. So how can we empower the organizers or further empower them?
yeah. How to help empower. Okay. All right. I think we have a lot of good things here, right? And so these are challenges, right? And now we can set goals, right? Which are going to be our OKRs. So we can say, okay, let's say churn, right? Okay, so my objective for my team, we'll see churn a lot in these groups. So the objective is going to be to decrease churn. And I'm just going to put the result in one sentence, okay? Decrease churn by, I don't know, X%, whatever it is, right? So the goal, the objective is to decrease churn, and this is the result. How to keep groups not become chaotic? How can we describe it as an OKR? What does chaotic mean, right? Ellie, how can we?
I feel like it bundles up into part of customer satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe some sort of, customer satisfaction
Yeah,
score or something.
quality and this seem to be similar,
Mhm.
right? They have the same objective. So increase user satisfaction by, whatever, 4%. All right. Now let's go to this. Trust. I guess, is trust outside this satisfaction? Yeah, probably, right? But how do we say, yeah, I'm gonna leave that out because that's a little bit difficult. But how do we,
Conversions is a measure of trust.
yeah, totally. Increase conversions, users. Yeah, I don't know, it's in person. How about this? How to increase usefulness and discovery of group? How do we set that as a goal? Usefulness and discovery. What's the outcome of discovering and something being useful?
More impressions of that group.
Increase more search? No, search means only that you're searching.
Yeah, so they have to actually go to the group page. So unique visits.
Yeah, but let's say that doesn't exist yet. Like, let's say that the search sucks today. So, that's an interesting one, right? So let's say that we have a feature that enables people to find content or documents on that group real easily.
Oh, I thought you meant actual like finding the group.
Finding the group.
Yeah. Kunal, can you clarify? Did you mean like finding the actual group to belong to, or did you mean finding relevant information within that group's page?
Yeah, I actually meant both. Yeah, so both of them, they're kind of problems right now, right? It's pretty hard to find relevant groups, and then once you even find a relevant group, it is a little kind of tricky to find the relevant conversations.
How do we measure relevancy?
Relevancy is, like in plain English, relevancy is essentially something that is useful for me, right?
So I think having come from like a media product, we base like search, I mean, I'm not search, like discovery recommendations just on like the number of people that clicked on it and then the number of people that actually saw the page.
Click-through rate. Increase click-through rate of group search. And maybe for content would be different because the feature
would be number of searches, maybe?
Number of searches?
Although I think he's suggesting more, I don't know if it's a search feature or just that perhaps like through personalization, the content that you would most want appears.
I think that would be reflected more on the frequency of use, I think. That, if the user is coming to the group more often.
But if they don't find value right away, they're not going to come back.
Yeah, so if we create a feature that enables them to find content on the group real fast, we expect them to come back. So I would say increase in, increase in stickiness or stickiness of user.
Like, I mean, another way to think about it is a lot of products right now are recommendations based, right? So Netflix is recommendation based, Amazon is. So how do they measure their success with respect to discovery of products?
Yeah, I think it's click-through rate, right? Now, all right. So, but I think that the key takeaway of this is the method, right? When they ask you this question, you're thinking long term. Then when we started thinking, okay, what are the things in terms of the first of all, we want to increase this North Star, right? We put in here interactions per user. So what is blocking the user from doing that? What are the challenges, of increasing that? And that's how we came up with all these points. And then we translate them into OKRs, right? So the OKRs don't tell you how you're going to do it. They just tell you what you want to achieve and how you're going to measure the result at the end. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's it. That's how I would do it, right? If you guys have other methods, very happy to hear about it. Any other questions?
What was the original question again?
And the original question was, it's very good. What are your goals? And they can ask you this question for any product.
Okay.
What are your goals?
So one other way that I might approach this, and I like your breakdown of growth, conversion, engagement, is just by thinking of like, what's the conversion funnel?
Mm-hmm.
And then how do we feed each parts of that funnel, and what's our ultimate goal at the end of that funnel? And then break it down by metrics in each place of the funnel.
Yeah, you definitely can think of it in terms of the funnel. And this is a funnel, right?
Yes, yeah.
I just didn't draw it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm thinking also in terms of that. Good call. Any other questions, guys?
I guess the one other thing would be like the three loops of growth or whatever. Have you guys heard of this? But it's like the data loop, the viral loop, and I can't remember the third one. But it's like making sure that each part of that loop is being fed.
Yeah, I usually don't get into those terms because I don't know them, and I try to keep things simple. Because otherwise it gets complicated. But I think I've heard that terminology somewhere. All right. Any other feedback? So now try to answer this question for another one. For example, what are your goals for Facebook events or Facebook local? That's a good one, right?
What was the other one? Facebook what?
Facebook local would be one. Or what are your goals for Instagram? That's a harder one.
Isn't it more ads?
Oh,
Maybe. But yeah, so, are all of you guys practicing right now in the calendar?
yes.
Yeah.
Where is the calendar? Sorry.
The calendar, go to StellarPeers.com and sign up, and then you can find the calendar where people are doing mock interviews.
Okay.
You guys feel free to send me email anytime about anything about StellarPeers that you think we need to improve and things like that. Would be very helpful.
Sure. Sure. Sounds good.
All right, guys.
Thank you very much for this session. It's really informative and useful. Thanks.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Marina.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.